I was making soup when my daughter-in-law struck my head with a ladle. "Who cooks like that?" "You incompetent," shouted Taylor, as I felt the hot metal searing against my temple. My son, Mark, sitting in the living room, simply turned up the volume on the television, as if he hadn't heard, as if it didn't matter. 5 minutes later, a deafening crash came from the kitchen. Pots, dishes, my body hitting the floor. Mark ran over and froze in the doorway. "Mum, what did you do?" he whispered, looking at me sprawled among the wreckage of my own dignity. But what neither of them knew in that moment was that I still had one last card hidden. A card that would change everything. My name is Eleanor. I am 71 years old with hands calloused by decades of kneading bread for others and a heart that until recently believed blindly in family loyalty. What a fool I was. How blind I had been. 6 months ago, I buried my husband Arthur. 50 years of marriage evaporated one April afternoon when his heart decided to give up while he was watering the geraniums in the backyard. I found him there on his knees, the hose still dripping water onto his brown shoes. Since that day, my world became silence and yellowing photographs. I was left alone in a house that was too big, surrounded by memories that hurt to touch. Mark, my only son, insisted that I move in with him and his wife. "You can't be alone. Mum, at your age, it's dangerous." He sounded worried over the phone. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. So, I packed my life into 4 suitcases and left behind the house where I raised my son, where Arthur and I used to dance in the kitchen on Sundays, where every corner held pieces of us. Mark's house was modern, with gleaming floors and furniture that looked straight out of a magazine. Taylor, my daughter-in-law, greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome, Eleanor," she said, without calling me mother-in-law, without calling me mom, just Eleanor, as if I were a stranger. From the very first day, I knew I had made a mistake, but it was too late to go back. I settled into the guest room, a small room at the end of the hall with a window that overlooked a dark alley. I hung Arthur's photographs on the wall, neatly arranged my grey dresses in the closet, and tried to make myself invisible. That was my new role, existing without being in the way. Mornings began early. I got up at 6, brewed coffee, made breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, freshly squeezed orange juice. Mark came down first, always in a hurry, always looking at his phone. "Thanks, Mum," he would mumble without looking up. Taylor appeared later, wrapped in a green silk robe, her hair perfectly styled, even at that hour. She sat at the table and scrutinized every detail of my work with critical eyes. "The coffee is watery," she would say. "The eggs have too much salt." Never a thank you. Never an acknowledgement. I just nodded, smiled, and tried again the next day. I wanted to be useful. I wanted to be needed. I wanted to believe I still had a place in my son's life. Days turned into weeks. I cleaned, cooked, did the laundry. I became a shadow moving through the house, picking up crumbs, folding towels, tidying spaces no one else saw. Taylor worked from home, always on important calls, always stressed. When something went wrong in her day, I was the easiest target. "Why did you leave this here?" she would yell at me, pointing to a cup I had forgotten on the side table. "You can't do anything right." Mark was present during these moments, but he never said a thing. He just looked the other way, as if it wasn't his problem, as if I wasn't his mother. There were nights when I stayed awake, listening to the wall clock tick every second. I wondered what I had done wrong. Where had I failed as a mother? Why did my son allow me to be treated this way? Tears fell silently onto my pillow, and I dried them before dawn because I couldn't show weakness. I couldn't give them a reason to get rid of me. But that afternoon, while I was preparing the vegetable soup that Mark loved so much as a boy, something broke. I was chopping carrots, focused on making everything perfect, when Taylor burst into the kitchen like a hurricane. "What are you doing?" she asked, with that sharp voice I knew too well. "Soup for dinner?" I replied softly without turning around. "Mark's favorite recipe." She moved closer, looked into the pot, and her face twisted in disgust. "This looks like pig slop. How much salt did you put in? Are you trying to poison us?" Her words were daggers. I tried to explain, but she wouldn't listen. She grabbed the ladle from the pot, and before I could react, slammed it against my head. The blow left me stunned. I felt the heat of the metal, the boiling liquid running down my hair, the sharp pain in my temple. Who cooks like that? "You incompetent!" Taylor screamed, her voice echoing throughout the house. I stumbled, holding on to the edge of the stove. From the living room, I heard the television. Mark was there. He could hear everything, and he just turned up the volume. That was the moment something inside me went out. The physical pain was nothing compared to the betrayal of that silence. My son, the boy I carried in my womb, whom I raised with every ounce of love I had, chose the sound of a TV show over my suffering. I stood there, leaning against the stove, the ladle still dripping soup at my feet. Taylor looked at me with those eyes full of contempt, waiting for me to apologize. to kneel, to beg her forgiveness for existing. But I could only think of Mark, of how the television volume had increased just as she screamed, of how he knew exactly what was happening and chose not to see it. "You're pathetic," Taylor spat, crossing her arms. "Look at this mess. You can't even make a damn soup. I don't know why Mark insisted on bringing you here. You're a burden. A useless person just taking up space." Every word was a slap. I wanted to answer, to defend myself, but my voice was trapped somewhere deep in my throat. I tried to clean up, to collect the drops of soup from the floor, but my hands were trembling. My head was throbbing where the ladle had hit. Taylor stormed out of the kitchen and I was left alone amid the steam and the silence. If this story touches you, please subscribe to the channel and share the video to help me grow and reach more people. 5 minutes. That was all it took for me to make a decision. I looked at the pots lined up on the stove. I looked at the dishes piled in the drainer. I looked at that kitchen that I had cleaned every day for months, trying to earn a place in this house that was never mine. And something inside me simply exploded. It wasn't planned. It wasn't calculated. It was pure survival instinct. I grabbed the largest pot, the one containing the soup she had criticized so much, and emptied it into the sink. The hot liquid ran down the drain with an almost violent sound. Then I grabbed another pot and another. I let them fall. Some onto the floor, others against the kitchen counter. The plates slipped from my hands. The cups shattered. Cutlery flew through the air. It was a chaotic, liberating, necessary clamour. I heard Mark's hurried footsteps. "What was that?" he shouted from the hallway. When he reached the kitchen, he stopped dead. His face paled as he saw me there, surrounded by overturned pots, spilled soup, and broken dishes. There was a trickle of blood on my temple where the ladle had hit me. "Mom, what did you do?" he whispered. But he didn't come closer. He didn't touch me. He just looked at me as if I were to blame for everything. Taylor appeared behind him, and her expression of horror quickly turned to fury. "She's crazy. Your mother is completely insane," she shrieked, pointing at me as if I were a dangerous animal. "Look at this mess. She destroyed my entire kitchen. Call someone. Mark. This woman needs to be locked up." Mark looked at me. I looked back at him, hoping he would say something, that he would defend me, that he would at least ask why I had done this. But he just shook his head, disappointed, ashamed. "Mum, why? Why do you do these things?" "Why?" I repeated, and my voice sounded hoarse. broken. Your wife hit me with a boiling ladle. Mark. She hit me. And you turned up the television volume. The words came out like knives. He blinked, confused, or perhaps feigning confusion. I didn't hear it. Mom, I didn't know. Liar. The word hung between us like poison. You were there. You heard everything. And you chose to do nothing. Taylor stepped between us, her face red with rage. I won't tolerate this. I won't live under the same roof as this ungrateful old woman who respects nothing. Mark, you have to choose. Either she leaves or I do. The silence that followed was worse than any scream. I looked at my son, begging him with my eyes to choose me, to remember who raised him, who spent sleepless nights when he had a fever, who worked 2 jobs to pay for his college. But Mark was looking at the floor, his hands in his pockets, defeated. I'm sorry. Mom, he finally mumbled. But I think it's better if you look for somewhere else. This isn't working. You're causing problems. You need to leave. The world stopped. My heart stopped. Everything stopped. You're kicking me out? I asked, although I already knew the answer. Your wife hits me and you kick me out. It's not like that. Mom, it's just that Taylor and I need our space. You need your independence. It will be better for everyone. He spoke in rehearsed phrases, empty words that someone else had put in his mouth. My son wasn't there anymore. Only a stranger with his face remained. When? I asked, feeling the tears start to burn behind my eyes. Tomorrow morning. I'll call you a taxi. You can stay in a hotel while you find something permanent. I'll help you with some expenses. He was dismissing me like an employee. He didn't even have the courage to look me in the eye. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at Arthur's photographs, wondering what he would say if he could see me now. I packed my things slowly, folding each item carefully, as if external order could contain the internal chaos. At dawn, I heard the taxi horn. Mark was waiting for me at the door with $200 in his hand. For you to settle in, he said, unable to meet my gaze. I didn't hug him. I didn't say goodbye. I just took the money, grabbed my suitcases, and left that house without looking back. The taxi driver asked me where I wanted to go. I had no answer. To any cheap motel. I finally told him. He took me to a place on the outskirts of Los Angeles, one of those roadside hotels with flickering neon signs and carpets that smelled of dampness. The room cost $30 a night. I did the math in my head. With $200, I could survive for less than a week. The motel room was small, with stained beige walls and a bed that creaked every time I moved. There was a window overlooking the parking lot, where cars came and went at all hours of the night. The neon light of the sign flickered every few seconds, bathing everything in a sickly reddish glow. I sat on that bed and for the first time in months cried without restraint. They weren't silent tears. They were deep sobs that came from some dark place in my chest. Years of accumulated pain, swallowed humiliations, unspoken words. I cried for Arthur, who had left, leaving me alone in a world I no longer recognized. I cried for Mark, the child who once hugged me and called me his hero. I cried for myself, for the woman I had been, and who now didn't know who she was. When the tears dried, only the emptiness remained. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror under the cruel fluorescent light. A 71-year-old woman stared back at me. Deep wrinkles, swollen eyes, messy grey hair. There was a purple mark on my temple where the ladle had hit me. I touched the wound gently and felt how the physical pain was almost a relief compared to the other pain, the one without a name. The days began to blur. I stayed in the room all the time, watching television without really seeing it, eating the bare minimum. I only went out to buy something from the vending machine in the hallway. Salty chips, instant coffee, granola bars. Once the machine swallowed my last $2 without giving me anything in return. I stood there watching the money disappear and felt it was a perfect metaphor for my life. I sent messages to Mark. At first, I tried to be dignified. Son, I need to talk to you. Nothing. Then I tried to be more direct. Mark, I'm running out of money. Silence. Finally, I stopped trying. The messages were marked as read, but there was never a response. It was like shouting into a bottomless pit. A week later, the money ran out. The motel receptionist, a man in his 40s with a prominent belly and tired eyes, knocked on my door. Ma'am, I need you to pay or vacate the room. His voice wasn't cruel, just professional, indifferent. I explained my situation, begged for one more day, but he just shook his head. I'm sorry. Mum, those are the rules. I packed my suitcases again. 4 suitcases that now weighed like corpses. I dragged them through the parking lot under a scorching sun, not knowing where to go. I walked for hours. My feet hurt. My hands had blisters from carrying so much weight. But I kept going because stopping meant accepting that I had nowhere to go. I ended up in a park near downtown Los Angeles. There were metal benches under the trees, pigeons pecking at crumbs, children playing on the swings. I sat on a secluded bench and watched life continue as if I didn't exist. A woman passed with her young daughter. The girl looked at me curiously, but her mother pulled her hand and quickened her pace as if poverty were contagious. That was my first night sleeping on the street. I didn't really sleep. I stayed seated, clutching my purse, startled by every noise. There were other homeless people in the park, mostly men, who huddled under cardboard. One of them approached and offered me a piece of stale bread. "Eat it, Grandma. You have to be careful out here." I took the bread with trembling hands and thanked him. He nodded and walked away, dragging a bag full of cans. The days turned into a survival routine. I searched for food in the dumpsters behind restaurants. At first I was disgusted. I was ashamed. But hunger is stronger than pride. I found day-old bread, bruised fruits, leftovers that people had left on their plates. I ate hidden in alleys where no one could see me. There was a church a few blocks away that served soup on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I lined up with dozens of other people, all with broken stories written on their faces. A young volunteer served me the bowl with a compassionate smile that made me feel even smaller. "God bless you," she would say. I just nodded, unable to form words. Nights were the worst. Cold, long, full of fear. I lay on the bench with my suitcases around me, using my sweater as a blanket. I heard distant sirens, occasional shouts, the constant hum of the city that never slept. I thought about Mark lying in his comfortable bed in his heated house while I shivered under the stars. I wondered if he thought about me, if he cared, if he knew his mother was sleeping on the street. One morning, a police officer woke me with his flashlight. "Ma'am, you can't stay here. You have to move." I explained that I had nowhere to go. He sighed, tired of hearing stories like mine. "There's a shelter 6 blocks away. Go there." He gave me the address and left. I tried to go, but the shelter was full. "Come back early tomorrow," they told me. Always tomorrow. Always wait. Never now. 2 weeks passed like this, or maybe 3. I lost count. The days blurred into a haze of exhaustion and hopelessness. My clothes were dirty, my hair greasy, my skin covered in grime. I had become one of those invisible people that everyone avoided looking at. A statistic, a shadow. But in the midst of all that suffering, something strange happened. I started to remember things I had forgotten. I remembered that before I married Arthur, I wanted to study literature. I remembered that I once won a poetry contest in school. I remembered that there was a time when I had my own dreams before becoming a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a shadow. One afternoon, while searching through my suitcases for clean clothes, I found an envelope I didn't remember packing. It was old, yellowed, with my name written in Arthur's unmistakable handwriting. My heart leaped. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a letter and several folded documents. The letter began with, "My dearest Eleanor." I immediately recognized when he had written it. It was from 2 years ago when Arthur had been hospitalized with pneumonia. I thought it had just been a scare. But now I understood that he had faced his own mortality. If you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you, the letter said. Forgive me for not telling you everything while I was alive. I always wanted to shield you from the worries of money, of business, of legal complexities. But now I see it was a mistake to keep you in the dark. My eyes filled with tears as I read. Arthur's voice resonated in every word. For the last 30 years, I made investments, small at first, then larger. I bought properties when no one wanted them, in neighborhoods that later became valuable. I saved every extra cent. I did it all thinking about our future, about your security. I never told you because I didn't want you to worry, because I wanted to surprise you in our old age with the peace of mind of knowing you would be well taken care of. My breathing quickened. I unfolded the documents that accompanied the letter. They were deeds, property titles, investment certificates. My eyes scanned the papers, unable to believe what they were seeing. An apartment building downtown, another one in the northern area, company stocks, bank accounts with numbers that seemed impossible. My hands were trembling so much that the papers almost fell to the ground. I read each document once, twice, 3 times, trying to process the information. There were 13 properties in my name. 13 entire buildings, apartments, commercial spaces. And one of those addresses was painfully familiar. Magnolia Street, number 452. It was the building where Mark and Taylor lived. The building where I had been kicked out, where I had been humiliated, hit, and discarded like trash, was mine. It had been mine all this time. I felt something churn in my stomach. It wasn't just surprise. It was a mixture of disbelief, pain, and something darker that was slowly beginning to grow. Arthur's letter continued on the second page. Contact the lawyer, Mr. Davies. He has all the original documents and will help you with everything. His number is at the end of this letter. Eleanor, my love, never let anyone make you feel less than you are. You are a strong, capable, valuable woman. If someone treats you badly, remember that you have the power to defend yourself. I loved you every day of my life. Take care. Your Arthur. I sat on that park bench, surrounded by my suitcases, holding the proof that I was not the destitute woman everyone saw passing by. I was the owner of an estate valued at millions of dollars. Millions. And I had been sleeping on the street, eating from the garbage, begging for crumbs. The irony was so brutal that I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I did both. I laughed like a madwoman as tears streamed down my dirty cheeks. People passing by looked at me with pity or fear, moving away from the crazy old woman in the park. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Or maybe I still was. But now I knew something they didn't. I searched through my things until I found a payphone that still worked. I dialed the number for the lawyer. Mr. Davies, with trembling fingers. It rang 3 times before a professional voice answered. Davies and Associates law firm. How may I help you? I need to speak with the lawyer. Mr. Davies. It's about Arthur Salazar. My voice sounded hoarse, broken from weeks of barely using it. There was a pause. Who is speaking? Please, I am Eleanor Salazar, Arthur's widow. Another pause. Longer this time. Mrs. Salazar. We have been trying to contact you for months. Where are you, Mr. Davies urgently needs to see you. I gave them the park's address. They told me they would send a car in less than 30 minutes. I returned to my bench and waited, clutching those documents as if they were the only real thing in the world. Maybe they were. The car that arrived was black, elegant, with tinted windows. The driver got out and looked at me with a neutral, professional expression, as if picking up homeless women were part of his daily routine. Mrs. Salazar. I nodded. He loaded my suitcases into the trunk and opened the back door for me. The interior smelled of leather and expensive air freshener. I felt dirty, out of place, but I didn't care anymore. The law firm was in the financial district in one of those glass buildings that reflected the sky. We went up in a silent elevator to the 15th floor. The receptionist looked me up and down but didn't say anything. She just pointed down a hallway. Mr. Davies is waiting for you in his office. Mr. Davies was a man in his 52nd with perfectly combed grey hair and thin-rimmed glasses. He stood up when I entered, and for a second I saw surprise on his face at my state. But he quickly replaced it with a professional expression. "Mrs. Salazar, please have a seat. I can offer you water, coffee, water, please." My voice was barely a whisper. He poured a glass from a crystal carafe and handed it to me. I drank as if I hadn't had water in days, which was in a way true. "Mrs. Salazar, we have been trying to locate you since Mr. Arthur passed away. We left messages at your old house. We sent letters. Your son told us you had moved, but he didn't provide us with a contact address." My son. The words came out bitter. My son kicked me out of his house 3 weeks ago. I've been living on the street. The lawyer frowned. "I understand. I am very sorry to hear that. But I want you to know that your financial situation is very solid. Your husband was an extremely foresightful man. Have you reviewed the documents he left you?" I took the wrinkled envelope from my purse and placed it on the desk. "I found them yesterday. I don't understand everything they say." Roger looked them over carefully. "Ah, I see. These are duplicates. I have the certified originals here. Allow me to explain your current situation. Mrs. Salazar, you are the owner of 13 properties in the city, valued at approximately $8 million in total. Additionally, you have investments in funds and stocks worth an additional $2 million. Your husband also left you 3 bank accounts with readily available cash of approximately $500,000. The numbers floated in the air like something unreal. $10 million, 10 million. And I had been searching for food in dumpsters. "It can't be real," I whispered. "It is completely real, Mrs. Salazar. And there's something else you should know. One of the buildings you own is on Magnolia Street, number 452, according to our records. Your son, Mark Salazar, and his wife, Taylor, to occupy apartment 301 inches that building." "That's correct." I nodded slowly. "That's correct. Then you should know that they have been living there under a reduced rent contract that your husband granted them 5 years ago. They pay barely $400 monthly for an apartment that would be worth $2,500 on the market. It was a family favor that Mr. Arthur granted them. $400. Mark was paying $400 to live in a luxury apartment thanks to his father's generosity. And he had kicked me out onto the street. He had left me with nothing. The lawyer continued speaking, explaining details about taxes, property management, but I barely listened. My mind was processing something else. "Can I cancel that contract?" I asked suddenly, interrupting him. Mr. Davies stopped and looked at me attentively. You are the owner, Mrs. Salazar. You can do whatever you wish with your properties. However, there are legal procedures we must follow. You can't simply kick them out without notice. I don't want to kick them out yet. The words came out cold, calculated. I want them to adjust their rent to the market price. $2,500. You said, have them pay that. The lawyer nodded slowly. That is within your rights. We would have to notify them 30 days in advance about the change in contract terms. Are you sure you want to proceed? Completely sure. Mr. Davies took notes on his computer. Very well. I will prepare the necessary documents. Now, Mrs. Salazar, there are more immediate matters we must attend to. Your housing situation. For example, you have several options. You can move into any of your unoccupied properties, or I can help you find a temporary place while you decide what to do. I want to see the other buildings. All of them. I want to know exactly what I own. Of course, we can organize visits starting tomorrow. In the meantime, allow me to arrange a hotel room for you, an appropriate place where you can rest and recover. He stood up and made a call. In minutes, everything was coordinated. A 5-star hotel downtown. Executive suite. All paid for from my own account. Before I left, Mr. Davies handed me a bank card. This has access to one of your checking accounts. There are $50,000 available for immediate expenses. Use what you need. And Mrs. Salazar, one more thing. Your husband asked me to tell you something if you ever came to see me under difficult circumstances. He made me promise. He took a sealed envelope from a drawer. He told me, verbatim, if my Eleanor comes to you beaten down by life, give her this and tell her that I always knew she was stronger than she thought she was. I took the envelope with hands that no longer trembled so much. I opened it right there in front of the lawyer. Mr. Davies. It was another letter from Arthur. This one shorter, written in black ink on thick paper. My love, if you are reading this, it means someone hurt you enough that you sought help. I know your pride. I know how hard it is for you to ask for anything. But I want you to know one thing. I built all this for you. Every property, every investment, every penny saved was thought of for the day when I would be gone, and you would need to defend yourself. Don't let anyone, not even our own blood, make you feel small. You're a giant. Eleanor, you always were. Now prove it. tears streamed down my cheeks as I read. Mr. Davies had the delicacy to look away, pretending to review some papers. I folded the letter carefully and put it away with the other one. Arthur had known. Somehow he had known that one day I would need this, that I would need a shield, an armor, a castle of my own. The hotel was everything my life had ceased to be. Soft carpets, sheets that smelled of lavender, a bathroom with a marble tub. I stood in the middle of the suite for several minutes, just looking. It seemed unreal. 24 hours ago, I was sleeping on a park bench. Now, I was in a room that cost $300 a night. The first thing I did was take a bath. I filled the tub with hot water to the brim and submerged myself completely. The water darkened with weeks of grime. I scrubbed my skin until it hurt, washed my hair 3 times, removing every trace of the street from my body. When I got out, I wrapped myself in a white robe that hung behind the door. It was so soft it almost made me cry again. I ordered room service, soup, fresh baked bread, roast chicken, salad, dessert. When the food arrived on a cart with a white tablecloth, I sat down and ate slowly, savoring every bite. It wasn't just food. It was dignity. It was power. It was proof that I still existed as something more than a shadow. That night I slept 12 hours straight. I slept without being startled, without fear, without cold. When I woke up, the sun was coming through the curtains, and for a moment I didn't remember where I was. Then everything came back. The documents, the money, the properties, my new reality. For the next few days, Mr. Davies took me to see each of my properties, apartment buildings, commercial spaces, even a small shopping centre in the southern area. Each place represented years of Arthur's silent work. Investments made with patience and vision. He explained how everything worked. The rental contracts, the maintenance, the monthly income. I listened and took notes like a diligent student. The net income from all your properties totals approximately $45,000 a month. He told me one day while we were reviewing reports in his office. After taxes and maintenance costs, you are looking at an annual income of about $400,000. That's without touching the principal capital. $400,000 a year. And I had been begging for a bowl of soup at church. The irony was still brutal. But now there was something else. A plan was forming in my mind. A cold, calculated, patient plan. Mr. Davies, I need us to make some changes. I told him one afternoon. But I need them to be done discreetly. without anyone knowing that I'm the one behind it. He leaned back in his chair, intrigued. What kind of changes? First, the building on Magnolia Street. I want to raise my son's rent to the market price as we discussed. But I also want you to review all the other contracts in that building. If there are other special arrangements, reduced prices, favors being granted, I want everything to return to normal rates. Everyone. I want that building to operate as a real business, not a charity organization. Mr. Davies nodded and took notes. It can be done. Anything else? I want to buy new clothes. I want to change my appearance. And I want a business name. Something I can use to sign documents, to appear in contracts. I don't want anyone to know that Eleanor Salazar is the owner of all this. We can create a legal entity, an LLC. We choose a name and all documents are signed under that name. You will be the hidden beneficiary. It's perfectly legal and very common in the real estate sector. Perfect. Call it Mendoza Enterprises. Over the next 2 weeks, I transformed. I went to beauty salons where my hair was cut and dyed, covering the grey with an elegant brown. I went to boutiques where attentive staff helped me choose clothes that fit me well, that made me look like the woman of resources I now was. Pearl grey dresses, earth-toned pants, suits, dark green silk blouses. Nothing flashy. Everything classy. I bought new glasses with modern frames. I got a manicure. I learned to use a little makeup to cover the deepest wrinkles. I wasn't becoming someone else. I was finding the Eleanor who had been buried under years of silence. I am ready to assist you with the next step in this story or with any other request you may have.